Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Road to Retirement. My name's Chris Anselmo with Brookside Tax and Financial Group, and Tony Marlette's also with us. And then we have our co-host over there from Minnesota. How bad is it there, Tony?
Well, we got about 9 inches on Tuesday, so just this past week. So there's a lot of snow on the ground, and then the next night it was like 10 below zero at night. So we've had cold and snow. It's just February is usually the worst month here, January and February. So
we just had 60s we were at 60 on Tuesday.
But we're 20 today.
It's not like we're in Tampa either. So
it did get up in the 40s a couple of days before the snowstorm. So that's crazy. We're setting records all over the place, but it's just winter in Minnesota is what it really is. So, but you guys getting close to the 60s, that's
just
that
for
hurts.
A day or two.
That hurts.
It was 60 for 2 days, and then we got like 6 inches of snow the next day. So, but for listeners out there, the timing is if this is live or taped, Russia invaded Ukraine last night. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about how it's going to affect the markets. We think it'll affect, it's going to affect some, obviously some goods and services. Oil is probably going to go up. Gas is going to go up. I read somewhere that it's going to be tough maybe to get batteries because Russia has a lot of the nickel supplies that we need for batteries. But so we talk a little bit about that. So, Tony, you've listened to Gradient's presentation? What have you heard on that?
Yeah, just looking at listening to different media outlets and the Gradient coverage, like you mentioned as well. I mean, essentially, really the market is in correction territory year to date anyway. And that was before last night happened. But I think last night was kind of baked into that, so to speak. I think a lot of people knew that this was going to happen at some point. There's a lot of what Gradient said had to do with international portfolios and funds are not necessarily geared towards Russia or Ukraine, minus the energy component, like you said. So, a lot of it directly is not going to be a huge effect. And I know the portfolio managers at Gradient are not going to be overly active with this, but that we go back to the two things that drive the markets, which are fear and greed. So we're seeing the fear now with people just saying it's not even based in any logic or anything, but it's more people saying, I think things are going to collapse and I'm going to pull out right now while I can.
And I think it also depends on your time horizon. If you're in retirement or getting close to retirement, maybe you take a little more conservative approach. We find some investments that don't fluctuate so much with the market, or even some fixed products that you're gonna, they're gonna beat the bank rates, but keep you reasonably safe. And and we mentioned just off air, but if you're younger, if you're Tony's age, maybe when the market goes down, if you have money on the sidelines, it's time to get in, right?
You absolutely buy it up at this point. I mean, this, again, Russia and certainly Ukraine, but to a lesser extent, Russia, they just don't have that much to do with
our market.
Exactly. Investments anyway, from a global perspective.
Other than just the news media, oftentimes the news just the markets reflect one way for the news, even though the economics don't follow that.
Right.
So, it just might be a little hysteria for a while, but most of our clients, I think, we're just going to be, stay and hold. But, in the short term, if you want out and you want to put it somewhere safe, we have opportunities there to pick some safer products. You may have to go with insurance companies versus banks because, again, the banks, we haven't seen them at least in our area. I don't think they're even paying 1% most of the banks. So
not even close. No, I think the average CD rate right now is around 0.9, and that's for a CD, which is usually amplified from a savings account. I mean, maybe maybe a 3-year, I think is the average for that. But, we've talked about there being pending volatility before we knew anything about Russia potentially invading Ukraine like this. Right. We've talked about volatility for the last 6 months or so coming up. So I think for a lot of people, this is going to present an opportunity. Like you mentioned, Chris, if, you're closer to your goals right now and you don't want the market volatility, interest rates are slowly starting to creep up. Inflation is killing anything that's fixed right now. But really what you need to look at is, do I want to earn zero in the bank? Do I want to, potentially have short-term losses in the market? Or do I want to try to at least not get beat by inflation as bad with something fixed? And the latter of those three really is.
And as rates go up, we talked about this before, bond prices will go down. So you got to be leery about that. We had someone in the other day who had 80% of their money in bonds, and said, well, it's relatively safe, but we have a little spike in interest rates. Those aren't going to be so great. So, Tony, what have you, Mr. Shore, what have you heard from other advisors you talk with?
Well, yeah, and I mean, a lot of them, like you say, some of them are recommending, hey, you should probably, if you're going to move or you're closer in retirement, maybe you want to, like you said, there are insurance products that will offer a better return to try to keep up with this high inflation, they're saying. And things like there's a buffered index portfolio. I know that Gradient Investments offers that offers some protection on the downside. So they're talking about these things and ways to hedge against not only the volatile market, which we've already seen now that Russia's invaded Ukraine, like you guys are saying, it's probably we're going to see some more volatility, and that's based on emotions, not our actual economy. But inflation's still on the rise, and it's going to get worse because of this, like you said. So that said, you have to find ways to hedge against inflation. And that's what people are talking about out there. Other advisors that I'm talking to on the radio and interviewing are saying that. And, you guys have tips and strategies. Tony and Chris, you guys, that's what you do for your clients is come up with a plan that's going to take into account rising inflation and market volatility. And I think that's the punchline here, right? That's the key.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, this is when you need your advisor, right? You don't need your advisor when the market's doing 30% a year, right? That's easy. We could just throw a dart at the wall. It's really when in volatile times is when you need an advisor. And I think, Tony, you mentioned in one of the other podcasts about a Fidelity. Was it Fidelity that ran
the Vanguard survey?
Vanguard one, yeah.
Yeah. So we mentioned a Vanguard survey that I saw from 2019 or 2020 that concluded that an advisor can add 3 percentage points in value to the long term to their client's return. So,
and I think it was net of the advisor's fee.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
It's not about, correct. That's above and beyond everything. It's not about picking the right investments necessarily, although obviously that's a very big part of it. Really, I tell people sometimes it's about saving you from yourself. So taking
people panic.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, realistically, we've talked about, being younger and buying into the market on this. We've talked about if you don't have the risk tolerance or you don't have the time frame to go into something more stable, diversification is going to be the key. And it's going to depend on, where you have things allocated. I would never recommend that you just take advantage of one piece of advice. It's going to be a strategy across everything.
And we see oftentimes, at least in the Midwest, and probably similar in Minnesota there, but that clients fall in love with one company. It could be a company they worked for. So they have, 90% of their money in UPS stock, or not picking on UPS, but you know what I mean? They work there, Ford, whatever it may be. That's a little crazy too, especially in look, there's tons of good companies out there, to put it all in one company. This is probably not the time. It's probably never the time, but especially now. So
diversification is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Even if balance, even if it's, even if it was Amazon, I wouldn't have everything in one bucket.
Yeah.
But
even Apple and Amazon, you don't want all your, some people are in love with Tesla or Apple or Amazon. You're right. And they just they really go heavy there. And that's a mistake, especially during these times.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla's had a good ride, but their stock's volatile. I mean, it bounces up and down. So if you're dependent on your portfolio to throw you monthly income, that could be a problem, right? So
Elon Musk, who owns Tesla, could send out a tweet tomorrow that says something crazy. I mean, Elon Musk is a loose cannon, and his stocks. It's funny. Tesla's stock goes up and down depending on what he sneezes, and the stock goes down.
right.
It's crazy. It's
And
crazy.
and there's quite a few companies like that. I mean, if Bezos came out and said something about Amazon, there's people who can move the market just by their voice, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, crazy.
That's careful. I'll call out my mom, but years ago, my mom loved Martha Stewart stock, and I told her, look, you should never invest in a company that's one person's name, right? And sure enough, the only time ever she got invested in the market, right? And we bought some stock for her, and she went to jail, and it dropped, and never again. And I told you so's and all that kind of stuff. But love you, Mom. But
Was that the I Am Clone? Was that what it was?
I don't remember. There was a Martha Stewart
Yeah.
stock or whatever, because she had her brand, and it was a
Right.
pretty strong brand. It was in all the Kmart's and Walmart's and all that kind of stuff. So, but when your leader goes to jail, that's not so good. But
her name, they were putting her name on everything. So she was getting a lot of money. It was a brand that you could invest in. It was public. So
probably better than Phil Mickelson's brand right now, but that's a whole nother it's a whole nother story.
We're not going to get into golf again
No,
today, are we, Chris?
No. Actually, someone, I don't know if you could see this. See that I don't know if I can see. I got that rack of balls up there.
Yeah.
So someone came in. There's like 72 balls in each one of those. And I grab a ball when we go out of town. If we go to Minnesota and we play golf, I grab a logo ball and put it in there. And some lady just yesterday said, "Are those all your hole-in-ones?"
Oh,
and I said, and with a straight face, I go, "Yeah, it's a shame I was a bad putter. Maybe I could have made it."
Oh my goodness!
I got 80 hole-in-ones, but I'm sitting there doing taxes for a living. But so that was funny. Yeah, but once or twice a year, somebody will ask me, "Are those all your hole-in-ones?" Just got a couple. That's all. But,
otherwise, they're probably thinking, though, Chris. Otherwise, not to give you too hard of a time, but why would you keep those balls on the wall if they aren't holes in one? What good are they?
Yeah, right. It's funny, like on the PGA Tour, like at the Waste Management just a couple weeks ago. Actually, we had an event there one time, Tony. You were there in Scottsdale.
Yep.
Guy gets hole in one, throws the ball in the crowd. I'm like, I would think I'd keep that ball, but
you would think so. Yeah, that's crazy.
So, Tony, Marlette, what have you seen on the annuity side? Have you any decent rates out there?
Yeah, so we're getting rate as we talked about before. Interest rates in general are going up, so we're seeing rates on fixed annuities going up. We're seeing caps on index annuities going up, fixed index annuities. So basically, what we would look at is replacing some of that savings / CD money
Or bonds.
or bond. It's certainly bond money with one of those two options. I'm still not big on the fixed annuities because if inflation is going to be 6-7% over the next 12 months, you're still going to lose, because if you're earning, say, 2.5% on a 3-year annuity, your real return is still negative. So I'm okay with it for some short term, maybe CD savings money. But the fixed index annuities, Chris, we're seeing caps on those go up, and I like those now a little bit better.
Yeah, I saw one the other day almost at 4.5.
Outpace. Yeah. And the participation rates can be a good way to go now too. If you have even 30-40% participation rate in an index, and the index does pretty well, you stand to beat inflation.
So for our listeners, a participation rate would mean, let's say you have a 50% participation rate, and if the market does 20%, you get 10. If it does 12, you get 6. If it does 50, you get 25. So it's never going to do 50, but so you participate in that percentage of the market. So, but that's one way of maybe in a really good year you grab a little more, a few extra points. But still, even 3%, 2.5% is still crushing the banks.
Yeah,
and the banks is most of the time it's taxable.
Just gonna say, these are tax deferred. Plus, you have more liquidity with them. You take a penny out of a CD, you pay a penalty. At least with the annuities, you have access to a 10%. Without paying a penalty, and you get the higher rate. And the biggest thing, I think, is the tax deferral.
Tony, I think a lot of your other advisors you talk to are probably in a similar boat, saying the same things.
Yeah, they are, and that's why fixed index annuities and buffered indexes, where you get to participate in some of the upside, but either no downside or limited downside. If it's buffered, it's a limited downside. Like the fixed index annuities, you're talking about little or no fees, and your principal's protected, and your gains are locked in and become part of the principal.
Yeah.
So you're never going to go below zero. You're always going to keep your amount in there, and then anything you make above that, it's the closest way you can probably, like you were saying, Tony, to safety, and still somewhat keep up with inflation, at least in the low interest rate environment.
And Dr. Tony Shore, he's more than just a radio guy. I mean, Tony, how many radio shows do you do with investment guys in a week?
Yeah,
guys?
I probably do about 35, 40 shows a
so
week.
you hear a lot. You hear a lot from people like us. So you have a good breadth of knowledge.
Plus I work with Gradient Investments and know Mike Binger, who's on CNBC and Fox Business News, who talks a lot about what's going on with the markets, and so I hear a lot. I'm no financial expert, but I guess because I hear so much from the financial experts, like yourselves,
you're a mouthpiece, right? So you can relay the information.
Oh, so, yes, I can. And, you guys are financial services professionals that I think the point here is for our listeners, you've got to work with a financial services professional, especially during these times. You got to have an overall financial plan and picture in place. And it just gets more important the closer you get to retirement. You should have one starting with your first full-time job. And then if not, hey, how about in the 40s? But by the time you're in your 50s, you better have a solid retirement income plan. And
and here at Brookside, I don't know, toot our horn, but what the we're a little bit different because we are, we have CPAs, we have attorneys here. So we do look at not just your interest rates, but we look at your taxes. We look at, are you going to blow all the money on a nursing home? I mean, right now we just got new
picture.
Yeah, we look at, we got new stats in our town, at least, that nursing homes are running $101,000 a year.
Well, that's up from, what was it, just
94 last year. So, everyone talks about probate. We got to avoid probate. They listen to all the Ed Slots and all those people. Oh, you got to get a trust. And Matt says, look, that's all fine and dandy, but if you spend it all in a nursing home before you die, there's not going to be anything to probate anyhow. So, how do we protect some of that money? Because the government's not going to really assist paying for your nursing home until you get down to Medicare levels. But we're going to be spending money on Ukraine, but we're not going to be spending money on our seniors. So we really do look at the overall picture. Our left hand does know what the right hand's doing. So, if you want, especially for those that are already clients, a lot of clients just come in during tax season. And this is crazy because probably 4,000 to 5,000 people come in our office within 10 weeks. But usually they're just so laser focused. Let's get our tax return done. But you really do have to think about the big picture because taxes are just one small part of your overall financial plan. So
yeah, I mean, I can attest when I'm working with somebody, even on the financial side, in roles past where I was focused just on that and working for, one of the banks or a broker dealer, you had to refer that kind of thing out to somebody else. It's a huge asset for us to be able to just keep it in-house. If I'm running through somebody's financial plan and I'm saying, hey, what about a trust? What about setting up POA on these accounts? We can do that literally right here, and I can set you up to talk to somebody.
And we've had some bad experiences with, like you said, solely like brokerage houses, because their scapegoats like, well, we don't do taxes. Right. So they're like, we don't give tax advice. So you're on your own. So even though it's such a huge part, I mean, if you're paying 20, 30, 40% of your income in taxes, how could you not address that? I mean, it's not good enough to say, well, we don't do taxes. Right. So it really was I don't say a monumental effort, but it was a a strong effort to bring all that on their one house, and then we finally done it over the years. And
yeah, it's very helpful to have that big picture, and you guys have a full team there to really look at people's big picture.
I think we got like 14 people now. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're in a really cool building with a vault.
Yeah,
a bank building.
Yeah,
You
we bought a bank building. And we are full. We have 11 offices and 2 conference rooms and a reception area, and all the rooms are full. So,
Wow.
which is good. But we may have to build off the back, I don't know, or
Sure.
buy another. I mean, if things really get better, maybe we'll
Enclose
get another
the old
location.
drive-through. You have to build that, enclose it, and make that offices
The
as
only thing
well.
nice about that is it keeps the cars out of the snow.
I was going to say we get covered parking,
Yeah.
and we're not like downtown or anything paying for a parking garage.
Yeah, and we still kept the drive-through. So some clients come, they beep the little buzzer. Regina comes back, and they give them their tax return. So it's kind of nice. So.
Tony,
we're about
have you heard you mentioned just real quick talking to other advisors? Have you heard any of them mention anything about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin with inflation and taxes going the way they are? Do they address that with their clients?
I have not heard them mention in specific, as far as specifically regarding what's happening with inflation or the markets or things like that, as far as how inflation will affect and the interest rates, Bitcoin. When they talk about cryptocurrency and different types of cryptocurrencies, it's usually about either the volatility or how you need to be careful. And I think financial services professionals are wary of bringing this thing up. But I've had people do shows on cryptocurrency and are they NFTs now, and talk a little bit about that. But I think you have to be careful because, you've got the SEC and FINRA don't like licensed financial services professionals talking about these things because of their volatility.
Right.
However, it's becoming a reality in our world, and more people are talking about it, but not specifically in how that's being affected. It has been up and down, but of course the markets have been up and down, and a lot of people want to get into cryptocurrency. So it's a legitimate topic for sure. But the problem is, does anybody really know enough about it and is an expert? And I know Tony, it seems like the younger generation, the younger than Chris and I should say, but yourself, you probably have maybe more interest in that. Or I know I've had advisors say, I've got clients coming to me who have extra money who, want to do this. So
well, I talked to Mike Binger about a little bit, and at our last meeting, and he said, Gradient's looking at it, and when they think the time is right, they'll come up with some type of portfolio, but it's just not the right time right now. There's actually a new question on the tax return this year. Do you have cryptocurrency or virtual currency? And like,
right.
Wow, I don't know how that's a tax question, but I guess they want to track you.
The strange thing, I hear a lot of people asking me about it, and the ones that ask a lot of times are maybe the ones that do not quite have the risk score for it. They just kind of hear about what's trendy, what's hip.
Sure.
But I'm more curious about it as a hedge against a lot of things.
Sure. Yeah, and that could be. And I think as it goes, it's going to, I don't think it's going anywhere. The general consensus amongst financial professionals thinks, cryptocurrency is probably here to stay, and it's probably going to turn into maybe the primary form of currency at some point in the future. So, nobody has a crystal ball, but it's smart to want to look at it and see where it's headed. But yet it's still in its infancy stages, really. I mean, even if it's been around a number of years, but not that long in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah,
it's not like the market or bonds or banks
and
the banking system.
And who's backing it, right? Is it just
yeah.
fluffery? So, hey, we're about 25 minutes in. Any last comments by anybody? Okay. If not, thanks everyone for listening to Road to Retirement. We will be back with you soon. That's it for today. Have a good week.
See ya. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tony.